Quick Tech Talk with your host, Michael Anderson.
Hey folks, welcome to the Quick Tech Talk. Today we are joined by Daniel Sloan, who's helping me co-host this series on artificial intelligence and blockchain. Daniel is the co-founder of Future Tech, of Blockchain Saw, and many other technology companies. And today we are talking about using artificial intelligence for video analytics. So Daniel, thank you for joining us today.
As always, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this process.
Yeah. So help me understand a little bit better. Why is artificial intelligence the right technology for analyzing video?
Well, as you can imagine, there's so many things that are happening, and when you're looking at practical applications for, what do we want to get from this information? It's a data point, right?
Mhm.
So imagine you're at a car show, right? And you want to identify the people that are coming to the car show, what are the reactions to the cars, and be able to analyze that. So if you're unveiling, your Chevy, right? You have a new model of the new Corvette, you can take a survey afterwards and say, "Hey, Michael, what'd you think of this car?" And you might be
Yeah.
nice and go, "Yeah, I thought it was nice." But if we're analyzing the video and the video is literally able to detect 13 different emotions on your face, right?
Yeah.
And you go up there and your reaction, your emotional reaction to that car does not match your survey, they're
Mhm.
going to go with what your emotional reaction was, right? So
Yeah.
it's just a much better data set that you can get, real live data feeds that you're able to get this information versus just trying to rely upon people's honest feedback.
Yeah. It's much more sophisticated, right?
Very sophisticated. Yeah, the AI, if you can imagine, artificial intelligence, that engine is constantly analyzing. It's identifying who you are. Again, it's identifying your emotions. If you set the software up to build a database, if that person comes into the store a lot, you can start building a history of who those people are. All of those things. So again, data is the new oil, right?
Mhm.
And the problem is we get a lot of data that just doesn't make sense because you can't really trust the source of that, or it's very difficult to get the provenance of it, right? Here's a survey. Again, was that a truthful answer or not a truthful answer versus the AI saying, yes, this person answered this survey and their emotions do validate their answers to this. You can trust this data.
Right. Right. What are some of the other benefits of using AI to power real-time video analytics?
Well, as you can imagine, in a situation to where this is all fed through CCTV cameras, right?
Right.
Um, just think of the airport, right? Think about how many thousands of people are in the airport. Um, how hard is it for human beings to be looking and trying to detect bags, right? So, as a CCTV, that you have the vision, you can see everything. But if you literally had to have human eyes and brains trying to analyze every square inch of that, that would be a lot of manpower versus the AI doing that work of saying, hey, someone set a bag down, they left, now they're outside the proximity, give that a timer,
Yeah.
management by exception, an alert goes off. Michael has not come back to his bag in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you set that. Now all of a sudden security can be alerted, they can take action on that, versus I'm sitting here and I'm drinking my coffee and I'm looking at the monitors. You kind of get my drift, right?
Right.
Doesn't sleep, it doesn't get hungry, it doesn't take bathroom breaks. It's 24/7, always working.
Yeah. That's great. The 24/7, because you're right. In almost every movie, you see a security guard who falls asleep, and then some issue or something breaks out, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about the car show. We talked about airports. What are some other business use cases for this AI powered video analytics? And what are some of
So
the business outcomes that you've seen as a result of that?
certainly. Well, one of the use cases that we broke down for a client was footfall counting, right? So
Mm.
it has a module for people counting, the video feed from the CCTV. Again, whether you have an existing database that you're using that identifies the users, or you're building one,
Yeah.
that way you can re-identify that person, and it's just a great way to kind of see, who's coming in, who's coming out. You cover the entrance, you cover the exit, and it gives you kind of an accurate count of who's coming in and out of your store.
Yeah, that's great. What are some of the other outcomes that you've seen? I mean, if I'm a business owner and I have CCTV around, why should I consider implementing something like this? Right? Where are the biggest advantages that you see?
I can't stress enough. It's that facial data, right? You can identify the gender, the ethnicity, the age of the user, the 13, 14 different expressions of anger, pain, sadness, happiness. We're, I'm sure you've seen that, people kind of wear their emotions on their sleeve sometime, right? You don't,
Yeah,
words can be coming out of their mouth, but their body language and emotions are really telling you what they're thinking. And that's huge when you're trying to analyze who came into the store. Maybe you have a new item on a mannequin, right?
mhm,
And if you have emotics, analyzing those people and the reactions to that, and all of a sudden it comes back and gives you a report, and that 60% of the people have a negative reaction to that outfit.
yeah,
Well, maybe you should take that darn thing off the mannequin and put something else out there. But
right,
how would you get that data? How would you be able to do that unless you literally had someone sitting there watching people all day doing that?
right. Yeah, that's a great point. But that also makes me think about, right. You're watching people's emotions and ultimately analyzing their faces.
Mhm.
So is when I've talked to others about video analytics and using AI for this recognition, should people be concerned about having their face analyzed and stored on a server somewhere?
So essentially, all the data and information that we collect on that it's anonymous,
Hmm.
and unless it's in a security kind of situation to where you're like the government and you're connected into a database and you're trying to identify, people on the watch list or whatever, you come into a store, you're just, you know, 1.5.6 or something, right? And it's
Yeah,
analyzing that information. Now, there are some stores that are saying, hey, can we collect this data? Can we gather this? Can we track your purchase history so we can offer you coupons and discounts and things like that? And so we're getting to this almost a new economy to where they're asking you permission versus spying on you and trying to,
right.
say, hey, I'm Alexa, and you start talking about cruises, and next thing you know, you start getting ads on Google for cruises, right?
Yeah,
They're asking you, say, hey, Michael, we will pay you for your data. We're trying to, identify people in your age and your ethnicity and your income bracket and all these things. And all of a sudden you start building this huge data warehouse of information based upon good info
yeah,
because you're compensating people for it, and they're saying, sure, collect my data, it's out there anyways. But versus them kind of doing that on the sly and sneakily, now they're having to get you to opt in and get your permission to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And I think an important thing to note is most people who have iPhones use facial recognition software that Apple stores
They
to
do.
get into your phone in the first place. So I
Hmm.
think there are a lot of ways in which we do give that information, we do give that data in exchange for a greater ease of use of whatever device we're using. So, are you seeing some people who are willing to give up their data? Are they willing to do that? And what's the advantage of giving up their data? Like, what can they expect in return for that transaction?
For example, if just imagine you're a frequent customer of a store and you come in, and what are you doing? You're bringing your wallet, you bring in your credit card, you bring in all your identification, right? So I come in, system scans and analyzes the face and says, this is 99.9% Daniel Sloan.
Yeah.
Now you have all my information, you have everything. I'm paperless now. I'm cardless. I mean, we're transacting right there because we now have that identity on file. You have all my credit cards, all my information. I can now transact with you without having to have all those layers and kind of processes in between. So, it's interesting. You see in Europe and other places to where you walk up to a vending machine, you've got your phone, boom, you use your phone. They're kind of going that way right now, where you have your phone as kind of the in between, right? That's identifying your identity. If you've got your phone and you've got the passcode to it, then obviously you should be the person that is authorized to purchase. Well, what if someone steals that phone? What if someone holds you up? You know what I mean? So if you could take that phone out of the equation and use your thumbprint, your facial ID, some kind of biometrics, that's much more secure.
Yeah. and much more convenient as well. I mean, when we go back to our previous talk about airports, um, the worst nightmare for a traveler, right, is to lose something like their passport or ID or
Like,
plane ticket while traveling and can't get back home. I had a personal experience like that when our car got broken into while we were traveling abroad in London, and had to go through the U.S. embassy and through all that rigmarole. And so something like a facial recognition would um, help us, get through without having to go through the whole process of finding a passport, expediting it, changing flights, and all those things.
yeah. So ultimately, you kind of understand two factor authentication right on your phone. You try to go to an account, you log in with your password, and it says, "Okay, we're going to send you a text." Well, guess
Mhm.
what? Someone stole your phone and your passwords. They can still do all that,
Yeah,
but you're going to steal my face. You're going to steal my thumbprint.
mm,
That's pretty hard to do a deep fake on something like that, to where you come in and do whatever you could try to do to the face, right, for
yeah,
the system to say, well, that is Daniel Sloan, and then to come up and then have to say, okay, before you make the purchase, put your thumbprint down as your second
yeah.
factor authentication. Now they're going to have my thumbprint. So unless this is kind of Tom Cruise Mission Impossible stuff, pretty hard to kind of fake both of those points. And as you just said, I'm not carrying a passport, I'm carrying a wallet. I'm all I need, because that's all being securely, and kind of that's where blockchain comes in, right?
Mhm.
Having that layer of security to where our information just isn't sitting in an Oracle database, to where if someone breaks into that database, now they have all of our information, right? Our information sitting in a blockchain that is nearly impossible to hack.
Yeah,
So I can trust and say, hey, my information for all my financial data is safe. My identity is the only way to access it. Now I'm walking around with no wallet and everything else, and I'm transacting. Maybe that's the wave of the future.
yeah. Having that full transparency. I mean, that's one great thing about um, blockchain is you have the security, in and everybody has transparency to the transactions going on. Same thing like with your face, right? You're fully transparent, and same with your thumbprint. So actually allowing that transparency out in the world actually ends up protecting you more in the long run.
Well, think about this. I mean, credit cards charge an inordinate amount of interest and fees, because not because they love charging that, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse that they end up having to eat and cover because of the government regulation. So imagine cutting that out, right? That
yeah,
overhead. So if it's, let's say, just say 10 billion a year in fraud, waste, and abuse, and they're having to pass that off to us as the customer, to say, Michael, if you come on to this new system and use biometrics and do this, we'll lower your interest rate. We'll give you a carrot, because we know your card's going to get stolen. No one's going to be able to charge to it, right?
right.
No one's going to get your account. So, it's like you're mitigating my risk as a business so much that I can pass that savings on to you. And then I go, hell, I'm paying 8% for a credit card fee. I'd love to pay 4. What do I have to do? And all of a sudden, just through mitigating their risks, they're still making the same amount of profit, if maybe more, because they don't have all this overhead and the fraud, waste, and abuse. Plus, it'd be nice to cut out the scammers, right? Not let them steal our cards and go buy stuff they don't need.
Yeah.
80-inch TVs, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really like how you kind of helped us come full circle and get back to the power of blockchain, and in combination with artificial intelligence and the video analytics. I mean, you really do have an incredibly powerful, robust, and safe combination of technology.
Yeah, I really feel like to get adoption to this, you have to have both, right? Just kind of like we talked with the pandemic management solution, where people don't want to be tracked, people don't want to be big brothered. Same thing with their information. If you're going to store my face and my fingerprint, and I'm going to trust all my account information, and you have all of that, I've got to be sure that that isn't vulnerable, that someone can't go in and steal
Right.
it from you. And so that's kind of where the two kind of come together. And really that's with any technology. You can't get adoption without trust.
Yeah. Well said. I think that's a good note to end on. And so I just want to say thank you again for the time. I enjoyed this conversation, some of the dynamics of video analytics and blockchain. So again, thank you so much for your time, Daniel. And we'll talk to you next week.
As always, Michael, appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.